Thanks for coming. So, all of you remember this event last April, the Macondo 252 rig exploded in the Gulf of Mexico. And of course, I lived in Texas and have done a lot of work in the oil industry. This is very, watched on TV with the rest of you, with the experience of, oh my God. And this is a map of the spill. And you can see that right here is where the well is, and you can see the breadth of the spill zone at the time. And you've got Biloxi up here and New Orleans over here, and then you've got a lot of the Gulfport, or not Gulfport, but Fourchon, Venice, Louisiana, a lot of those small Louisiana parishes. So it was very close to what was happening, to the people who were out here in the marshes. I know this thing works. So a lot of fear, a lot of damage, a lot of damage control. Now, this is what it looked like. It looked like peanut butter in the water. All right. On June 13th, 2 months after the spill, it's Friday night, I'm enjoying my glass of wine, as I customarily do at the end of the day. And my phone rings, and it's my friend Clint Wood from BP. And I'd known Clint from a project that I'd done several years ago, and on a throughput improvement project. And he called me up and he said, listen, I'm in charge of the critical suppliers team. I need some help with the manufacturers of Boom. Now I'll show you what that is in a minute, all right? But that call launched us into a project that lasted from mid-June to approximately early December, when we finally exited the project, and the project actually wound down. And there were two phases to the project. Part one was, how do we get more stuff out to the Gulf? How do we get the tools that they need? Our task was to get more. I think I'll give a little bit more detail on this, but we had the task of doubling, tripling, decoupling the output of these facilities in the space of 30 days. So the task was, give us more in 30 days. They've already told us they're giving us everything. Your job is to go and figure out how can we do more. And of course, I don't know any better, and I said, of course, yes, we can make that happen, absolutely. And so, like I said, I got the call on Friday night, and Sunday night I had people on airplanes. Now, this is, we never starved the effort. So when you hear my customer talk about it, when my customer talks about this, this project, he said, what you did is you made me look good. I never starved the effort. So even though the news talked a lot about, we don't have enough boom, we don't have we don't have enough skimmers, well, that's just the news. The truth was that they never starved the effort, never ran out. Now, stage two started in August. I'll get to this. 14,000 vessels in the Gulf that responded to the spill. Now, let me just talk for a second about the spill response. BP has about 40,000 employees worldwide. At the time of the spill, they had 20,000 of their people working on the spill response. So essentially, they took half their company and directed them to the spill response. That does not include all of the vessels, which you see here. I've got 14,000 vessels. It does not include all of the contractors, people like me, people like all of the oil field services companies. At one point, there were probably close to 80,000 people engaged in the response to cleaning up responding to this spill. BP paid the bill. Even when it wasn't their fault, they paid the bill. Even when there were people cheating them, they paid the bill. There were never questions about this. Now, so I've talked to some of you privately about this, and what this created was a tempo that I had never experienced before. So I told you that he called me on Friday. I had people on airplanes Sunday. Okay, so it's the weekend. All right, so I had to call and find people, get them engaged, get them under contract, get the right people, find out where they're going to go, clear off their calendar, get the arrangements made with the customer, with the supplier, so they're ready to receive my people. All right, and all of that happened in the space of about a day. This is the tempo. This is the tempo. That's kind of slow, because sometimes I would get a call and we would do something and it would be implemented that afternoon, and I'll show you more about that in a little while. Now, I'm already 10 minutes into the presentation. I'm only on like the third slide, so I promise to go over. All right? Now, the cool thing is that in this project, we grew a Fortune 500 company from zero, nothing, no people, no organization, no computers, no facilities, nothing, to a company of about 4,000 people, and then brought it back to zero in the space of about 4 months. And in the process, we got rid of all the vessels. All right? Now, got rid of them, meaning we got them off the payroll, right? we didn't get rid of them. So 2 parts. Now, part 1. Holy cow, where are we going to get this? We've cornered the market, and it is still not enough. At the beginning of the spill, BP cornered the market worldwide. They bought everything. All the boom, all the skimmers, all the Tyvek suits, all the protective equipment. They bought it all of it. And it still wasn't enough. So their question is, how do we get more? All right, well, those of you that worked in TOC, you know how to get more. All right, I know how to get more. All right, so we sent our consultants to get more. Now, just a little background. What is this stuff? Now, we talk about boom, and there's a couple of different kinds of boom. There's the absorbent boom. All right, and the absorbent boom is the stuff that soaks up the oil, but not the water. Now, typically, this stuff is made up of polypropylene. It's plastic. But sometimes it's also made out of cotton, a treated cotton, that somehow is hydrophilic. It doesn't absorb water. In one supplier, we took them from a truck a day to 10 trucks a day. Okay, this is just one supplier. Now, another kind of boom is, for lack of a better term, I'm going to call it barrier boom. Now, my people hate to hear me talk like this, but a boom is nothing but a pool noodle with a piece of plastic on it and a chain on the bottom to hold it down, right? So my pointer's not working really well, but you can see, all right, I've got a flotation. It's wrapped in plastic. There's a seam, a piece of chain across the bottom, and then we have all of the things at the ends to hook them together. Now those things sit in the water about this deep, right? Because the oil will float on the water, so you don't need to have it go really deep. And all this boom does is just keep the oil kind of contained. And then we have the other kind of containment boom, which is fire boom, which was used extensively further out in the Gulf. And what it does is it allows you to burn the oil off while you contain it. So this is kind of what it looks like deployed. All right, I've got another picture. Here's what it looks like deployed out in the Gulf. All right, so you just kind of rope it around and put it in a big pool, and then they would have boats come in and skim it off and then haul it away. And that's where most of the work later was, because what they would do is they would grab all of this oil that was floating, they would pull it up, and then they have these boats, aptly named Big Gulp 1, 2, 3, and 4. That would come out and just kind of drive through this oil and put it into their vessel. And then they would pump it in. There was also some high-tech stuff that was done. You heard a lot of people talk about the the technological response to the oil. A lot of people had these ideas, and there were a couple of good ones. This stuff over here on the left is from an outfit in Connecticut called Select Plastics. Very, very effective. The cool thing about that was it was the first, most of the time, they would take the boom, the absorbent boom, it would absorb the oil, and then they would have to bury it, right? They would have to dispose of it in a hazardous waste. With this stuff, what you're able to do is you're actually able to use it, put it in a centrifuge, take the oil out of it, and then reuse it. Now, unfortunately, they weren't able to deploy that through, in all the areas that we wanted, in all the areas that I wanted anyway. And then there's skimmers. Now, skimmers essentially are just boats that drive through the water and they brush the water off. They brush the oil off the water and it goes into a boat. Now, sometimes a skimmer, so you see a skimmer here, that's Ed Kinser there, who's on the Pinnacle Strategies team, who was pivotal in making this work. But this is a little skimmer, all right? And typically it would be attached to a boat, all right? So that's one type of a skimmer. There are other skimmers that are actual vessels, all right? See, I don't know if I have a picture. So here's a vessel. See that one right over there on the left, or on the right there, that's from an outfit in the Northwest called Quijack, all right? And they make aluminum vessels, primarily for Coast Guard and stuff like that, but they also cornered the market on skimmer boats too. And we worked with those guys. On the left is a bladder. Once you skim up the oil, you got to have some place to put it. And they really were struggling with this solution of, okay, I've got all this oil, where does it go now? All right, so one of the ideas that they had was these giant bladders, and they would pump them full of oil and then they would tow them behind the boats. It worked, but not very well. What really worked was the big boats and the tankers. That's the thing that really worked. But they tried everything. There were so many things that they were trying to do, trying stuff, discarding it, trying stuff, discarding it, trying stuff, discarding it. What you heard on the news was a lot of complaint about things aren't moving fast enough. But I'll tell you that I was there, and every day somebody was trying something new. Every day somebody was trying something different to see if we could make it go faster. And essentially that's what won us the business. Now, in reflecting on this as a businessman, this is not something that I could have planned for, marketed to, built a transition tree, built a strategy and tactics tree. It's just, I was in the right place at the right time. I'd done some good work and somebody remembered me. And that is the only reason that I got there. It's just the Lord in heaven said, Mark, today is your day, and it was, all right? And so that was, it was just one of those things that, the opportunity came, and I saw that it was a big opportunity, and I saw it was important. And it was important. And all the people on the project, everyone, okay, and I'm not just talking about Pinnacle Strategies people, I'm talking about every person to a man was proud and happy and thrilled to be working on this project, because we weren't making stuff, we're making a difference, we're making it better. And I'll tell you that the workload for these people who are involved in the spill, 12-hour days, 7 days a week, all right, from August to November, every single day. Now, I had to kind of kick people off and tell them to go home and see their families, all right, but that was just the tempo, go, get it done, now, this afternoon, no wait, go try something, break it. That was the tempo. So it's with that in mind, okay, that it's kind of that sense of urgency, all right, we're out there trying to get more, all right. So phase one, we're out there, we're trying to work with these companies, and our mission was to increase production by 3 to 5 times in 30 days for all of these companies. So we sent people, we had to go and kind of, these are not detailed assessments that we did in these plants, okay? These are 1-day visits, and that's what we had to do, all right? And of course, so what do? They call Super Pinnacle Guy. Thanks, Kevin. Was Kevin Cole's in here? That's Kevin Cole's drawing. He did that for me, all right? So we felt like we were up to the task, all right? And we did 18 suppliers in a month. And you can see we went from corner to corner, coast to coast. We didn't go to California, but Washington, Vancouver, Florida. I don't have Tampa down there. We had one guy visited 5 countries in 3 days for skimmer manufacturing. So that was our mission. That's what we did, 18 suppliers in a month. Now, what we did was real simple. We just put our TOC goggles on. All right? We just put our TOC, we walked out there, we walked out on their shop floor, and so, okay, what are they doing? We did a very small process map, figured out the focusing steps, and if there were some lean things that we could do, and we could do them fast, we did them. We grabbed the owner or the plant manager and said, here's what you can do, and we did them right there. I mean, that afternoon, while we were there. And the suppliers had a very strong impetus to work with us. Once they realized that we were not there to beat them up, okay? We were there to say, BP wants to give you more money, we're here to help facilitate that, right? And once they realized that, then that we were there to help them, and it was a lot easier to get them. There was some kind of reluctance with some people, but by and large, people were very welcoming and glad to have us. They opened the doors to their plants, and they welcomed us every single time. So we just did a quick walkthrough and did kind of a process map, all right? So the very first thing is just show us the process. So, you know, in my book, I say, you know, you want to learn how to do this, staple yourself to an order. That's what we did. We just stapled ourselves to an order, walked through the process, and made a very high level kind of thing. So this is, on the left, this is Prestige. Just a word about Prestige. Prestige is a boom manufacturer in the Grand Rapids area that at the beginning of the incident made awnings. You know, building awnings, and grew his company essentially from 0 to 500 people overnight, and was the biggest supplier of boom, containment boom. And one of the things, so that was one thing that we did, and then the other thing, this is Applied Fabric Technologies. They're a fire boom guy. I don't even remember where those guys are. So again, you know, we just applied the same basic process, all right? Walked the shop floor, all right? We walked the floor. You know, we did a quick capacity assessment based, you know, we couldn't, you know, so we have only a few hours, right? So we have only a few hours in this facility, an afternoon. So how do you do it? Well, you walk in and you find the constraint and you say, what's the capacity of the constraint? How many units are you producing? Do the quick calculations and say, okay, now let's look at the process. Are there things that can be done? What needs to happen? And the kinds of things, we didn't do any data collection. I've got on the slide here, no data collection. So I think, you know, the point is that there was no advance work. It was just, we got off an airplane and we showed up because there was no time. There was no time. So, Ed, you know, the guys that did this, Ed and Dom and a handful of other guys that did this, you know, they just put on their TOC goggles and figured it out, and worked with the team and made it happen. So some of the things that we found, just policies, okay? One of the things was payment terms, right? These companies grew really fast. They had no money. They couldn't buy raw materials. They couldn't get paid, right? And of course, some of the obvious things, over-processing, people doing extra work. And this really had to do more with understanding what is the requirement, right? So we had people that were way overbuilding stuff, that they didn't need to do because that was kind of their product, and we had to tell them, no, BP doesn't want your standard stuff. What they want is something that'll just do the job, okay? Just do the job and then move on. So we were able to, essentially, we were re-engineering their product on the shop floor. You know, calling the engineers at BP saying, is this okay? Calling the supply chain, is this okay? We want to change it to do this. And we would have a decision, you know, like in an hour. That's the tempo that we were dealing with. There were no there was no obstacle that could not be broken. None. If we needed to get it done, it got done. One of the things too was offloading. So this that's Quijack, that's the vessel supplier. They offloaded to Trinity Yacht Makers. Okay, so Trinity Yacht Builders in Gulfport, Mississippi. They make those luxury barges for the sheikhs and stuff like that. They're making skimmers, right? So just simple stuff, all right? Just simple stuff. Nothing, not rocket science, all right? Just get in there, get it done, and move on. This is a absorbent boom. This is kind of what they look like. I don't know if you can see that really well. See this guy right here? So, a lot of these places, they have no idea of HS&E. Here's this guy in this room. You know, it's all this stuff blowing around. He doesn't even have a mask on. You know, the kinds of companies that we're working with ranged from really primitive, you know, guys working on plywood tables to very sophisticated. We visited a Milliken plant. We did because they were doing mats in Mexico. So broad range. Well, I don't want to go into the detail of what we did. This is more of an application of a lean thing, but we had a 6-minute tack time that we were trying to get, one boom every 6 minutes, and they had this thing, this welding station. All right, so essentially melting the plastic together. And we realized that they really didn't need to do that. You know, staples would have worked just fine. But they had this machine. They had to use this machine, right? So, you know, a lot of what we did was just simple policy constraint stuff. Just, you know, do we really need to do this? Just asking the question, do we really need to do that? So here were the results. Let's see, I'm going to stand over on this side so maybe you can see that. So look over on the right-hand side, and you can see that the change in output ranged from 20% increase to 600% increase in a day. In a day. The guy at Quijack, let's see, well, we don't even have the Quijack results up here. The guy at Quijack sent me a really nice letter. He said that he made enough from our one day to buy himself another yacht. All right, and this is a yacht builder, okay, a boat builder. So he was very, very happy. Very, very happy. We made a lot of friends.
Did he buy you a yacht?
No, damn it. But BP did. So that was the kind of thing. So, you know, all of this to illustrate, look, to get the big results, it's simple stuff. Simple, simple, simple. And when there is a strong enough motivation to get something done, stuff gets done. All right, nothing like a good crisis to create some momentum in an organization, yeah? Okay, so now we finished that. They capped the well, and now they've got 14,000 vessels. We have a fleet. We don't want a fleet. We're not in the boat business. What do we do? And here's the thing. All of these pieces of equipment, so this is a picture of some of the boats that you can see around the spill response, all right? You can't put a boat back into service if it leaves a sheen of oil behind it. So that means that we had 14,000 vessels that BP was paying rent for that were essentially idle, but could not be returned to service because they were contaminated, right? So it says daily spend, 25 million, all right? I can assure you, the number of the daily spend was much higher than that. Okay, so that's the official number. All right, and I won't tell you what the real number was, but it was much higher than that. So they had they did not like that. Okay, we'll just leave it at that. So by this time, the well's capped, all right, and the bean counters are now in control. All right, so the crisis is over, and now everybody's looking at, oh my gosh, look how much money we're spending. We've got to drive that down. So we've got 14,000 vessels. We're paying rent on them every single day. We have no facilities, no people, no equipment. What do we do? Well, we had to build the process. How are we going to clean these up? Measure the progress, integrate the suppliers, because BP is not in the boat building business. They don't build boats or clean boats. They drill oil wells. That's what they do. So they have to hire people to do this. And how many people know how to decontaminate vessels? Not very many. On this kind of scale, you know, when we did our initial calculations, at the very start of this, we estimated it, at the current rate of decontamination, it would take them 10 years to decontaminate all of the vessels. Well, that just was not going to happen. that was the word we got. That's not going to happen. It's not going to be 10 years. It's going to be less than 6 months, isn't it? And everybody's nodding their head. Yes, yes, sir. Aye, aye, sir. It will be less than 6 months. So we have to figure out how to do it. All right. So our job, Pinnacle Strategy's job, all right, was to create a process and then help them manage the process, constantly improve the process, and stay out of the way, all right? Because we didn't want to, you know, the last thing, they called us the performance management group, all right? We consisted of the performance management group. The last thing that we wanted to hear was performance management people are making our jobs harder, all right? So this was a significant challenge, right? Because, you know, we have to go out in the field. So here's what we did, and I'll come back to here's how we did it. Okay, one, we created a very structured process, worked with the IT people there. We designed in the drum. We said, this is the constraint, this is where it's going to be from the beginning. And as it turns out, the drum, the constraint, all right, the constraint is dock space. All right, so it wasn't even a machine. And the drum was the rate at which we could decontaminate one vessel foot. Right, so essentially we broke all this down. We said, how many vessel feet do we have? And that was the rate. And we measured what's the rate of vessel decontamination per day, per hour. All right? Yeah. So the other thing that we did too was we created the structure so they could run the process. So we had, in a second you'll see kind of where we were dispersed, but we had the command center, which was at first in Mobile and then moved to New Orleans. But the decontamination sites were spread throughout the Gulf of Mexico, right? So you have all of these decentralized sites, and you've got to figure out, well, how do we know what's going on? And every single day, our slide deck would go up to the admiral and to, you know, whoever it was. Here's what we did yesterday. All right. One of the things that we did, and we worked really hard, was to create standard work at the various sites. So each one of the sites had at least 2 people, and their job was to make sure that they were doing standardized processes, and that we had another group of people that were responsible for disseminating those best practices across the different sites, and essentially stay there so that the rate of vessel decon would continue to rise. Right? So we were always there, always challenging, always trying to do something new. And then we were also there as sort of the ambassadors. Now, I was telling somebody at cocktails, BP had 1 person at each site, 1. Everybody else, contractors, everyone else, 1 BP employee on a site with about 800 people. And so we, okay, the Pinnacle Strategies guys, We were the guys that were kind of like the glue that coordinated all of the different suppliers, because each site has the people who are doing the decon, the people who are doing supply chain, the people who are doing the facilities, medical care, food, maintenance, all of that stuff, all right? These are factories, all right? They're factories that sprung up from the ground. They're walls, they've got trailers where they have some air-conditioned spots, but most of it's tents or out in the open. That's what most of it was. And so we were the guys that are kind of holding it all together to help the people at the command centers to make sense of what's going on. All right, so that created a challenge for me and for Pinnacle Strategies, because at the beginning we had 5 consultants. I had to go to 30, all right, like that, all right? And so I had the challenge, and now that's a whole nother topic of how did we do that. But what I wanted to say was this was our org chart. This is my org chart. So at the beginning of this, it was just me. Just me, sitting in my home office, having a glass of wine, and then 3 months later, I got this. I have an animal, all right? Now, the great news is, so you recognize, you know some of these people, right? There are a lot of these people are in the TOC community. Derek sitting over here, you know, he was on the team briefly, and we beat him up and then spit him out again, you know. But my point here, there's Bart Penrod. I'm going to show you, I'll show you something that Bart did here a little while ago. But I'll tell you that, you know, the kind of people that we got, we didn't get a lot of TOC guys. We had a handful of TOC guys. But what we did have is we had some good TOC guys in some key spots. So we're in the upper left-hand corner where it says Decon Operations, Will Heffley. Will Heffley is Don Novotny's stepson, a very experienced TOC guy, And his job was to make sure all the rest of that stuff. We stole a bunch of people from GM, from their TOC/lean efforts. So we got a bunch of those guys. We stole some people from L3 Communications down in Dothan, Alabama, right? Where they were doing some TOC and lean stuff. You know, we just grabbed people wherever we could grab them. I had people calling me, and I'm like, you know, I want to quit my job and come to work. And I'm like, I'd love to have you, but. So anyway, so this is our challenge. This is the size of the team that I had to deal with, okay? They all did great, all right? I'll tell you that we only let one guy go, only one. Everybody else that came on stayed to the end until their job was done. This is where we were. We had 20 sites to be managed, all right? So you see on the left, all the way from Houston on the west to Miami on the east. And most of the activity, however, was in South Louisiana, Gulfport. This is where most of the action was, right in this area, right in here. So you can kind of get a sense of the task that we had, right? In July, none of these sites, I mean, these sites were there, but none of these sites were engaged in the work that they were doing in August. So these sites came up very quickly, went down very quickly. Now, our role, command center, all right, we were doing command center support. So we were responsible for making sure that the process got managed effectively. All right, that's one of the things that we did. And the Decon site, which I've already talked about, which is really working with the people. Working with the people. That was really important to engage the people. One of the lessons here is to get the kind of response that we were able to get. We were doing engagement from the top to the guy at the bottom, all right? The guy with the Tyvek suit. We had people, some of our guys were out there in areas that they shouldn't have been in, working directly with the guys in the Tyvek suits. And we had people on the corporate jet flying around with the big guns, you know, telling them kind of here's what we need to do. And that was the way that it happened. That's the way it had to happen. Now, so we get to this decon, all that boom that we made earlier, well, now we got to clean it up. All right, so so this is at the beginning, okay, when they first got it, okay, they had no idea that it just shows up like this. Now, this particular one on the left has mostly, you know, algae, all right? But they did come in, and you can see, I mean, it's a pretty high-tech operation. You can see it here on the left, all right? All right, they're black, and then when they're done, they're right, pretty high-tech there, right? I mean, you know, you got them on skids. And they've got the sprayers, right, the pressure washers, and that's how they're doing it at first. And then somebody came up with the idea of making a car wash, doing a car wash. So we had the idea on Friday, and we had it built by Monday, and it was running on Tuesday. That's how fast. I mean, look at that. I mean, that's a big piece of equipment. It's just a bunch of plywood and 2x4s and sprayers. Not sophisticated. Just, you know, somebody said, "Hey, let's try that," and so we did. All right. So, you know, for us, as being the facilitators, it's a dream project. Whatever we suggested, the client said, "Yeah, that's a great idea. Let's go do that." How about a car wash for boom? Wouldn't that be cool? Yeah, let's build that. And we come in the next day, and there it is. You know, so pretty exciting and very fulfilling, rewarding kinds of stuff. Let's see if I can get this. Okay, so this is two pictures of essentially the same boat. So you get a sense. This is a barge. This is the Big Gulp. All right. On the left there, you can see kind of the size of the boat, right? So they just fill this tank, and what the Big Gulp was just this barge, and you just drive it into the water and just scoop it up, right? It's really not very sophisticated, but you have this big tank full of oil, right? And you can see on the right is where it's kind of set up at the dock to be decontaminated. Now, you're going to see in a minute how sophisticated we were at doing this. This is Bart Penrod's work, and I'm happy to give him credit because this just kicks ass. So this is a video that Bart Penrod produced at the Pascagoula site, and is an example of how we were engaging the people doing the work. All right. Now, I don't know how much TOC you're going to get out of this, but you'll see a lot of TOC in it. So let's see if we can get it to work. I tested it before and it worked. So we can turn this up. You can see pretty sophisticated tools, you know. One of the things that they could only work short bursts of time out in the open because it was so hot. So we had to have these crews switch off after they only worked for a little while in the heat. So that was an example of one of the tools that we used, and I wanted to show it to you so you could see kind of the task. I mean, this is not really sophisticated, high-tech stuff. I mean, it's guys with Kim wipes and brushes and sprayers and Tyvek suits trying to get this done. You can see that the level, Pascagoula was one of the best sites in terms of its highest productivity, the highest output, and that was kind of the one we'd send everybody to Pascagoula first, and then they would go out to the other sites to get that learning. Now, this is just an example of another one of the tools. I mean, you saw, you know, in the video, you know, hopefully you saw a number of things, all right? You saw kind of some pattern stuff. Did you see the pattern, that pattern thing where we're kind of working on how do we remove interference from people? How do we make sure that people stay safe? How do we make sure we do the handoffs correctly? All of this geared around where's the constraint? The constraint is that boat, all right? So, you know, that's why we use the pit crew analogy, because it's so powerful to communicate, you know, what it is that we want people to do. You're not supposed to be efficient. The boat is efficient, all right? If you stand around, it's okay. Of course, these guys are standing around anyway, but, you know, except when they had a sprayer in their hand. If they didn't have they weren't standing around when they had that. So the kinds of stuff that we did, I mean, you know, we didn't do a lot of sophisticated stuff. So this is just a basic swim lane chart from the time the boat shows up to the time that the boat gets off hire, right? So we developed the process to make sure that all the boxes got ticked off, that legal was taken care of, that commercial was taken care of, the check was cut, the Coast Guard signed off on the vessel. All of that stuff had to get done, and we had to track it, right? So they developed, they had a team of software people, and this is all tracked in a software program they called Nautilus, I mean. And we developed, you know, the standard work on, you know, for example, that boat that you saw, all right, that really pretty one, right? It was beautiful. For a while, the boats would come in cleaner, or they would leave cleaner than they'd been in, like, since they were new. I mean, that's how beautiful they were. And of course, as the process went on, we realized we were over-processing just a little bit, right? Because so we ended up pulling back on that. And one of the things about that made us realize this was the wood deck boards, right? Because they get fouled with oil. You know, how clean is clean? How clean is clean? Is new clean? Do we have to replace these boards? And for a while, they were actually replacing the deck boards on top of these boats. So they had guys out there with the saws and stuff like that, and you know, we thought that it was stupid, okay? I say we, the Pinnacle Strategies team, thought it was stupid. So I'll never forget this. We had Ed Kinser was actually standing on the vessel calling up to the command center going, these guys are cutting the boards off of the boat. They're cutting the board. So we got the chief, all right? So my guy got the chief and said, hey, they're cutting these boards off the boat. He's going, what? Tell them to stop it right now. So Kurt, my project lead, tells Ed, Brian Wood says, stop right now. Stop it. Silence. I mean, that was the kind of stuff that went on, you know. We had an idea, it got implemented. We had a decision to get made. All we had to do was call somebody, make it happen. So one of the most important things about the response is developing the metrics and understanding what's the work. What is the work? So we had 5 key metrics. Dock utilization. How well is that when the boat is in its berth? How good or how much is it being utilized? Is there any idle time? In other words, you know, is the car in the pit and people are not working on it? Throughput, vessel feet processed, as I talked about. First time quality, all right? So in other words, did the Coast Guard guy have to come back and say, well, you missed a spot? Safety incidents. Just a word on safety. We did not have a single significant injury. Not one. Now, that's not to say we had a couple of near misses, but we did not have a single significant injury. Nobody broke their arm. Nobody got killed. You know, we had some heat issues, okay? But we were very, very conscious about safety. Some of the stuff, you know, you saw out there, you know, these are big vessels, they're on the water, it's hazardous equipment. What you didn't see is the most hazardous, which is inside the vessel. So we had guys that were dropping inside the vessel with their Tyvek suit, face mask, and they're spraying around in this enclosed space, cleaning the insides of these vessels. Very hazardous, very dangerous kinds of work. We were very, very conscious of making sure that no one got hurt. No one would get hurt, and nobody did. And of course, productivity. We would track productivity, but productivity was more about lost time and not about, you know, are we being efficient? It was just, are we losing time? So those are the big things. And every week, all right, we prepared a slide deck. And that slide deck, so each site had its own performance indicators. And then those indicators were rolled up and sent up to the command center. So you can see on the upper left-hand corner, the week of, well, it looks like late October. So we ranged from a high of 3,500 feet down to a low of 2,000 feet. You can see the utilization, total recordable incidents, incident rate. This is 0.3, 0.3. So very low recordable incidents. And then we had 100% first-time quality, all right, and that didn't change throughout. So that was instrumental in setting the tone, because everything that we did, every suggestion that we made, every recommendation, every improvement was geared to one of those four. So it was extremely helpful in terms when we did our lessons learned that if you want to get action, people have to be clear about what is that action on the metric. All right, what are we here for? Well, how do we measure progress, and how does this affect that metric? And so when we can say you're going to get, here's all this lost time, all right? You know, this one right here, this lost time, this got a lot of attention, a lot of attention. And we saw the lost time shrink. And you can see this is Lake Charles, all right? So, I mean, stupid stuff, okay? The vessel's idle, safety issues, confined space. We were waiting for the marine chemist, you know, just stuff, right? And these were the things that we systematically attacked through the project. Now, we also did a spot in dry dock, all right? Now, this is just an example. That we had 2 dry dock spots because we had where we actually had to take the vessels out of the water. This is in Tampa, all right? And, you know, Ed Kinser, that guy, you know, he shows up, and the next day he's running the facility because the plant manager had to leave. So he's running this facility. He just showed up, and he's running the joint. Now, one of the cool things that he did here is we'd changed the way that the blocks that the boats sit on, each one of these are configured for the boat. And this was the big lost time thing, right? So this was a big win here, and he was very unhappy when I sent him to another place. Now, I gave you a lot of stuff in terms of this is what the project was like. It was freaking crazy. But it was crazy in a great way. It was, I mean, it was so much fun, you know, chartering jets and, you know, somebody's calling over, you know, I got to have you here by 3 o'clock, so I got to put somebody on a private plane. He's got to fly across the country, and he's feeling like a rock star, and, coming up with an idea, and there's our car wash on the dock the next day. Wow, how cool is that? I mean, it was just great, so much fun. But, you know, as I look back on it, and, you know, what made it successful? What made this project rock? What made it work? And it's simple stuff. What's the goal? Why are we here? Right? How do we know what's our progress? Right? How are we doing on that progress? And then giving people the ability to respond to the right signals. So I've got up here, identify and communicate the key success factors, all right? So that was those 4 graphs. That was the center of everything that we did, those 4 graphs. Everything we did was about those 4 graphs. Now, that's not to say that there were political things going on and that we didn't get kind of chase rabbits down the hole. But in terms of what was significant about the project was everything that we did was around those 4 key metrics. And communicating them all up and down. Like I said, our slide decks were posted on the wall. They were out in the sites, and they were in the Admiral's deck, right? And that was kind of a point of I don't want to say a point of just as an aside. My project manager hated pulling stuff together for somebody else, So the other consultants, because we weren't the only consultants on this project. AY was there, and there were some other people in there as well. And he hated being subordinated to somebody else, because we're Pinnacle Strategies, don't you know? Anyway, the second thing is really establishing a rhythm. And the rhythm is a lot about having a daily review, focusing on the facts. What can we justify? Eliminating opinions. What are the real facts of the situation? And quick response. And this word right here, transparency, extremely important. Everyone has to believe the numbers. There were no games on this project. None. No games. At least none that I saw, okay? From my perspective, there were no games. But the point is that, transparency is the key to getting people to act, all right? And so we had daily leadership meetings to challenge people, right? So we're challenging them to improve, right? So we're looking at their lost time. We're looking at their idle time. Why is this happening? What are you doing to fix it? What kind of support do you need? Is a very, and all of this is done in a spirit of what do we need to do to make it better? Not, there's a problem with your site, right? None of that, right? There were the occasional late night airplane rides, okay, but most of it was, what can we do to get better? What can we do to make it go faster? What can we do? How can we make it better? And then, of course, the upward communication as well, making sure that everybody understands at the top what's happening at the bottom. So, part 1, the make more now. Here's kind of what we did, all right? We increased the output of these suppliers 2 to 10 times, all right? We didn't have software. We taught 0 workshops. You wouldn't find an S&T tree anywhere. We just went in there and rolled up our sleeves and did it. Part 2, somebody likened part 2 as, contrasted it to a typical project that we work on. Most of the time we work on projects and we're trying to make it go up and up and up and up as much as we can, all right? This project, we're trying to make it go down, down, down as quickly as possible. We're trying to screw this thing into the ground as quickly as we could. And we did. We got finished much faster. We saved, based on what their initial projections were, we saved $700 million. All right, nearly $1 billion. They were very grateful for that. They were very happy about that, but not so happy that I saw that. Not so happy that I got a performance payment or anything. But the point was that we were successful, and we made a difference.